Welcome back to the Ruby Tuesday. My name's Ruben and this is my tier ranking for all Fast and Furious 10 feature films. I'm also going to be including 3 honorable mentions that you might not have found in here. In the comments below, do let me know your rankings. Have you seen them all? How would you rank them? What do you consider to be the best Fast and Furious movie ever? Also, who's your favorite character? Let's jump in. So starting with the one that started it all, way back in 2001, I believe, The Fast and the Furious. Wow, where we had our cast introduced to us: Vin Diesel, Paul Walker, Michelle Rodriguez, Jordana Brewster, among others. Was directed by Rob Cohen. This is the one that's being taken from the grounding of the first kind of film that was basically a remake of Point Break. It's actually still a decent film, and having gone back and rewatched them all, this one holds up pretty much one of the most as a story, presence, fun, somewhat still grounded. The car chassis and the are able to do things that prior cars can probably do and survive, but the subsequent films not so much. So The Fast and Furious for me is a B rank. It's very hard to rank these films high because at the same time they're not like the greatest films of all time, but they are a lot of fun. Which takes us into Too Fast, Too Furious. We have a new director this time round by the name of John Singleton, and we also have introduced to us Tyrese Gibson, who I'm so glad is in the series subsequently. I think he's a fantastic character that plays off really well with another character that we have. Eva Mendes is in this one. I liked her character a lot. Ludacris, their banter between I think is great. James Remar I thought was excellent. Unfortunately, the story is a bit bland. It just doesn't have the pacing it wants to, and some of that racing with the CG is not great at all. In fact, I often, if I have to choose one random film to watch from the Fast and Furious franchise, this will always be the one that's kind of missed out. So Too Fast, Too Furious goes on the D. Which leads us to Fast and Furious 3, which is Tokyo Drift. I have a lot of time for this one, mostly because it's a film that can stand on its own. You don't actually have to watch it with any of the Fast and Furious, apart from that kind of credit scene with Vin Diesel at the end. This is kind of an initial D anime live action film, well, as close as we're getting to it. And for that reason alone, we have a fish out of water character who meets these races, and we have drifting. It's a different type. Obviously, we have Han there as well, which is why for me, it's one of the best. In fact, I prefer watching this to the first one. So I'm going to put that up in A. I know this is already very controversial and a lot of people are going, Ruben, you're off your nuts. What are you talking about? Fast and Furious is obviously the first. The Fast and Furious is obviously the best one. I don't think it is. So let's jump into number 4, which is also called Fast and Furious. I love the names, the numbers of this. They kind of go all over the place a little bit, depending on which country you hail from or what continent you're in. Between America and the UK, we often had different names for these Fast and Furious films, which is always tricky. So Fast and Furious 4. So Fast and Furious 4 is directed by Justin Lin. In fact, he's directed a number of the Fast and Furious franchise, and I actually prefer him as, well, I consider him to be the best director of the franchise for the Fast and Furious films that he's given us. However, I don't consider this to be the best one. It is certainly better paced than Too Fast, Too Furious, and the CG is better. The action sequences are more fun, and they go more bonkers, more crazy, which is why I'm going to put this in number C. So here we come to Fast 5 with the inclusion of The Rock being a massive boon to the franchise. In fact, seeing him do action sequences with Vin Diesel in this is probably one of the reasons why it's most people's favorite film. For me, the reason why it works so well is it's basically a remake of The Italian Job, just in Fast and Furious hyped up octane version. And I could put this Fast and Furious movie on whenever without having to watch any of the others because it's so much fun. The pacing is excellent, the tone is great, the banter really works, the script is well done, and the action is ridiculous, but at this point we know what to expect, which is why I'm going to give an S to Fast 5. So Fast 6 was surprisingly entertaining on a rewatch. I think it's only the third time I've watched this, and I was thoroughly entertained by 6. Surprised by the pacing of it. We're in London, we have Luke Evans as the bad guy. Some of the car things that they do with cars is crazy. I like the different kind of gadgets they're now incorporating into some of the Fast and Furious movies at this point. You know, not just explosions, but doing weird things, makeshift cars, doing crazy stunt cars, you know, that racing kind of F1 car that is flipping other cars all over. Those action sequences in London particularly, because I'm in the UK, seeing some of those streets used just made me wonder how they did it in the first place. But I thought it was quite riveting, and it brings about a new character that we're gonna get. This is the story, the start of that story, and I actually thought it was really entertaining. Not as good, but I don't know if I would have thought about that, whether it was not as good had I not seen Fast 5. Now Fast 6 is just below Fast 5, so I'm gonna put it with Fast and Furious in B. So Fast 7 is the inclusion of Jason Statham's character, Deckard Shaw. I actually like the whole family, even, you know, Luke Evans and obviously his mom, who's played by a wonderful Dame lady. I think this is fun. I don't think it stands above 6 or 5, but the action sequences, hand-to-hand combat that Jason Statham is so good with, makes it a lot of fun and more entertaining than I was expecting it to be upon rewatch. However, I don't think it's as good as 5, and I don't think it's as good as 6 or Tokyo Drift. So I'm gonna put it with the Fast and the Furious. Fast and Furious 8 is where the franchise lost the plot completely. We have a sequence in here with a submarine and The Rock pushing off a torpedo on an ice while he's driving a Jeep. And I enjoyed it. It reminded me of old action films like GoldenEye, that sort of Bond movie. We've kind of gone away from the car driving sequences, and now we just have hand-to-hand combat ready, and it's exciting to watch. But upon rewatch, it doesn't quite hold the ground that subsequent Fast and Furious films have. Look-wise, the CG, some of it was a bit of a letdown, and it seemed like it was edited more fastly paced cut than some of the others, so they were cutting really quickly to showcase a number of action sequences happening all at the same time, and sometimes it was too fast and too close. We needed to be a bit wider to enjoy obviously what is being choreographed. Whether that's because of CG and budget, I don't know. They've always had big budgets, but it just didn't feel quite right. However, I love watching the crazy stunts in this one, so I'm gonna put Fast 8 with Fast and Furious on C. Which leads me to Fast 9. Unfortunately, I was surprised at how much this, for me, is a one-time watch. I don't know what it is. The pacing is definitely off for me about Fast 9. It felt up in the air, even though it wasn't a massive cliffhanger. It almost could have finished there. We have characters that aren't with us anymore. I don't know if that makes a huge strain, but upon rewatch I really felt bored in a lot of places. Even the action sequences just felt boring, not quite as exciting. I feel like at this point we don't know that any of them are ever actually going to die. There doesn't seem to be any real consequences, because some that die, they come back. And so if there's no consequences, then you're not really scared for any of your characters, which makes the action redundant and the storyline just annoying, no matter how many times they keep saying this is about family. So although the first time I watched it in a loud cinema with the surround sound and all that, that was a fun ride. But on subsequent watches at home, it doesn't quite hit the mark anymore. In fact, I'm not sure which one I would rather watch, Too Fast, Too Furious or Fast 9. Too Fast, Too Furious probably, because I've watched that the least amount of times. So Fast 9 goes with Too Fast, Too Furious. I know that's going to upset a lot of people, but that's where I'm at with these. And so before we go into number 10, I'm going to list my honorable mentions. Here is one called Los Banderos and Turbo Charged, two short films that came before subsequent movies that kind of led into them, which you can find on YouTube, which are a lot of fun. And then you might not even know that Netflix did an animated series that now has 5 seasons. I think it's 5. I've only watched a couple of the seasons, and they weren't that bad. It definitely adhering to a younger demographic, the young audience, but there's still lots of connections and to the Fast and Furious world, definitely, obviously, because it's part of the family even, and it kind of keeps it all about the ridiculousness of other racing. It's all in there. It is a lot of fun, which is why I kind of wanted to mention. And lastly, Shaw and Hobbs, which I actually think, even though it's in an honorable mention, as part of the Fast and Furious franchise, I would put in A, because I love that film. I think it's, as a spin-off movie, it's really fun, ridiculous, and stupid, but holds up on rewatch. So now we come to Fast X, the latest crazy film. Now, at no point while watching this film did I go, yeah, this was a really great film, such great dialogue. I'm going to remember some of those conversations that they had. No, I've forgotten those conversations, except for Jason Momoa, who steals every scene in this film, who is worth going to the cinema to watch for it. I really want to see his character again. He's created something not quite as special, but almost like the Jack Sparrow character. There are moments where you see Joker influences inside his character that is very camp, flamboyant, his costume design, but also ridiculously menacing. And even though it's part 1 of 3 for the end of the franchise, X 1, 2, and 3 we're probably going to get, this was a really well-paced film apart from the beginning moment. It has issues with CG, and it has issues with places being all over the place until eventually we just feel like we're left hanging in the air. However, Jason Momoa inside of all of those scenes, creating chaos, makes it a really fun watch. I'm going to put this up in the A column. Now, S to D, I wouldn't rank other films in the same. This is just the Fast and Furious franchise. This is where they sit. If I was putting other action films like The Rock or, better crafted, more well acted, I would say this would be a different sort of tier. Let me know in the comments where your films rank in the Fast and Furious franchise. Have you seen some of those honorable mentions or not? Maybe you can go and find them if you're a big fan and didn't know of them. I hope you found this enjoyable and fun. I'm looking forward to what everybody else says their rankings are. Thanks so much for watching, but most of all, until next time, remember, live long and Tuesday.